Hello, everyone. Welcome to March Focus Friday. Renee, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone.
On the screen, you see the housekeeping. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them either in the chat or in the Q&A. And this way, when somebody's presenting, if you ask them via the Q&A, the other person should be able to see what the question was and get it answered. All right. All right, let me go ahead and figure out how to get my screen back. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to start by talking about the basics of create function. So we're going to give an overview, show the syntax, and show lots of examples. So last time I went over how to create expressions, the defines. And it's kind of basic. We showed you can have one expression, another expression can build off of the previous expression. But what if you have calculations that you're always doing? Similar calculations in multiple procedures against multiple synonyms. So if you have that situation, you can then create your own synonym you can create your own function using the same expressions that you have in your define. So why would you do this? For repetitive code, things that you're using frequently. For consistency, you create a function and then everybody can just call it and you're ensured that everybody's using the same calculations. Saves time and establishes and enforces business rules. So the syntax for define is define file name. You have your new field format equals expression, and then you can build and have as many expressions as you need to get your final calculation. For define function, it's exactly the same, except instead of define file name, we have define function name. And inside the function name, we're going to have parentheses and the parameters that the function is reading in. So here I have parm1 / and its format, and then parm2 and its format. In your define function, your last entry should be the function name as a field, whatever format equals expression. So this will be your final resulting return value. All right, so let's just jump into the examples. So I have this extremely simple example, profit. Profit is normally one value minus another value. So in my function, I'm passing in value 1 as a D12.2, value 2 is a D12.2, and then profit result is going to be also a D12.2, and it's going to be the difference between value 1 and value 2. So when I use it, I can say compute my profit equals profit, open paren, and it's the difference between retail cost and dealer cost. Another simple one, but not as simple, is margin. So notice the first line I have define function margin clear. What that does is if I already have a function called margin that I defined, the define function margin will clear it. Now, if I don't say clear, will it clear? Yes. So you can override a function by using the same name over. You don't have to say clear, it will automatically clear. You will, if you do two functions with the same name in the same procedure, you will get a message saying that the procedure was already defined, and this will overwrite the previous definition. So for margin, we're going to do the difference between retail cost, or RC, and dealer cost, DC, and then we're going to take that value times 100 divided by the dealer cost. So we're using two expressions now, get the net profit, and then we're going to do the margin. Now, had I previously defined a function called profit, then I could have used that function in this function, as long as physically this function comes after the previous one I'm going to use in it. So I'm going to use table file cart, compute my margin, D5.2 equals margin, and pass the two values. And I'm looking for that margin value greater than 20%. The real power with define function is when you do dates in Dialog Manager. Because define is only valid if you're doing table or modify. So table file name, define file name. Dates are very flexible when you're doing defines because we have date formats. In Dialog Manager, we don't have a date format. Everything is stored as alpha. So in a define, if I say date 1 equals 2023-10/31, and I'm going to add 30 to it, which is going to be 30 days, my new date is just going to be date 1 plus the day difference. Use it in a table request. And notice my new date is 2024-01/29 based on these dates. If I try to do the same thing in Dialog Manager, I'm going to do set amper date 1 equals 2023-10/31, just like we did in the define. I'm going to set add value to 90, also like we did in the define. And I'm going to do set new date equals date 1 plus add value and type the difference. When I run this time, though, I get 2023-11/21 as opposed to 2024-11/01/29. So why is that? Well, if I look at the echo of the Dialog Manager commands by setting echo equals all, you'll see that the first set, it's a literal, so we're going to see what we put in. The second set is a literal, but now new date is going to be 2023-10/31 plus 90. So it's the number 20,231,031 plus 90, which gives us 20,231,121. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing. If you create a function, I'm sorry, before we get there. So if you're going to do this in Dialog Manager, what you have to do then is convert the result back and forth to and from a smart date using the date convert. So here I'm taking date 1 and I'm going to convert it to a smart date, as you can see here in the YMD in the last function parameter. I'm going to add 90, so I'm taking the smart date plus the 90. I'm going to get a smart date result, which now I have to convert back into an I8 YYMD date. So there's a lot of extra, well, not a lot, but a couple extra steps that you have to do. So here you see when I do the conversion value is 44,954, which is the offset from December 31st, 1900. If I do this, now I get my date of January 29th, 2024, just like I did in the define. If you create your own function, though, passing in your in date and your add value, well, now I can just say my date in is going to be an A8 YYMD. So it's an alpha value that's in a date format. And then once I do that, I can just move it over into my smart date. Have my 90 and just add them like I did before. But now before I send it back to the function, I have to then make it an A8 YYMD again. So you're still doing the conversion, but the process of doing the conversion is a little simpler. Once this is in place, though, in order to use it, you just say set amper new date final equals my date add first parameter, second parameter, and you're done. And I also now get the correct date that I wanted. If you look at date, doing a date difference, well, in define, in order to get the difference of two dates, if they're smart dates, I can just subtract them. So I created a function, myDateDiff, where you put in the beginning date and an end date, and I'm putting in a date as year/month/day. So you do have to make sure that your function accounts for the format of the date that's coming in. So I'm saying the begin date T0, which is a temporary field, is going to be the A8YYMD like I did in the diff. And then I'm going to move it to a smart date. End date, I'm going to do exactly the same. So now the difference is just the end date minus the beginning date in their smart formats. Again, in my dialog manager, my date diff, begin date, end date. And in this case, I get a difference of 30 because I'm going from January 1st to January 31st. Any questions so far? So these are some functions I use every day. I have a function called mylen because we have a function called arglen, which gives me the length of a field up until the last non-blank character. So if I have so country is an A10, but England is only 7 characters. So if I want to see the length of England, I have to run it through the arglen. And it will give me the value 7, even though the field itself is physically 10 characters. I was using this length in many places, and I didn't want to have to keep remembering, well, this is not a smart function because I have to specify the length of the parameters. And I never remember, does the length come first and then the parameter name, or is it the parameter name and then the length? So this way I just have to figure it out once, put it in a function, and now anytime I just want to call the function, I basically made it a simplified function. Does it have to be converted to smart date when it is formatted YYMD? So if you're doing a define, YYMD is fine. You don't have to change the format at all. If it's an A8 and you're doing any type of date arithmetic, it's always recommended to change it to a smart date first. If you're doing the calculation in Dialog Manager, you always have to convert the date because the Dialog Manager does not have its native support for smart dates. It's just going to be a string of like 2025, 0321 for today. I have one to determine, is a field a date? Is this a valid date value? I have a CRT form, so people can input values, and I want to make sure that the date they're putting in is a valid date. So what I do is I take the date that they're putting in, put it into an I8YYMD, and then I move that into a smart date. And if it winds up being the value 0, then it's not a valid date. If it has a valid offset, then it is a valid date. So I return 0 if it's not valid and a 1 if it is valid. And then in this MyPad, I have certain fields that have certain lengths, and I want to pad either the left or the right based on the information that I'm getting. So I'm passing in an S, then I'm padding it with a 0 on the left using the lpad function, and I want the length to be 7 characters. If it's an in type M, I'm going to right pad with zeros, and I want the final length to be 8 characters. And otherwise, it's going to be a length of 3, and I'm going to left pad with zeros. So I'm passing it the type of which length I want, and if I'm padding on the left or the right. Is there some manner of benefit to WebFOCUS for dealing with dates like that? Is there any initiative to overhaul WebFOCUS to be a little more intuitive when dealing with dates and remove the entire convert? So again, the conversion really is only needed if you're doing Dialog Manager. In Define, there's a lot of intuitiveness already built into the product, especially if you're doing date literals. So if I say a date / YYMD equals, I can put English in there. I can say January 1st, 2025. And it'll understand and know the components in order to then put it into the right format. So Eric, if there's a specific instance that you had where it wasn't doing what you think it should be doing, let us know, and we can always evaluate it and see what's going on. And if it's not doing what you're expecting, we can always go ahead and try to make it a little better. I'm asking for a more standardization point of view. Pretty much most things like Excel, relational databases will store their dates and date times as an offset. So that's pretty standard. It's just the value that you're coming in, how does it understand? Okay, have everything working. Okay, so to explain a little more, he's looking to have everything work the same way, dialog manager, same as defines. Will we get there? Maybe one day. Yes, we would like to have everything work the same also. And in fact, we have, if you do any type of reading, a dash read in dialog manager, before you can only dash read basically in alpha format or an I format, which was still stored as an alpha. But in the newer versions, we now have a dash read file. So if you do have a date that's in a field and you have a master to read it, we will translate that smart date value into a dialog manager readable value. But we still don't have anything really to deal with the functions. But so at some point, hopefully we will, but I don't have anything for you right now that's definitive. Are the functions stored as a .fex file? Example, mylen.fex. So the defined function is code within a procedure, so it's in effect. So when I use them, I put them in my edit sprof or in my focprof. That way, when the focus session starts, all of the defines are initialized and ready. Good questions. All right, and that's all that I have for creating functions. So I'm going to hand it over to Renee if there's, oh wait, thumbs up to that. Okay, cool. I'll hand it over to Renee, and then I'll be back later when we start talking about mainframe things.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's see. Give me a moment. One second. Okay. You should be seeing my screen. Does it look good? Seeing the hub? Okay. Give me a second. Okay. So today, I believe, is a very exciting topic to discuss. I'm excited about it. I hope everyone attending today is excited as well. Starting in WebFOCUS release 9.2, we had a brand new white labeling feature that became available in the management center of the IBI WebFOCUS Hub. And what it does, it allows you to replace the default look and feel of the IBI user interface with a new look and feel based on, your color palette, branding, images, logos, favicons. So with this feature, you can actually update the favicon, the browser tab, label text, banner logos, and really change the default color palette for the WebFOCUS interface. And because these changes can actually impact, obviously, every user, as part of the feature, we actually permit you to, as administrator. So this feature is really available for the WebFOCUS administrator, where you can actually, preview your changes, revise them, revoke them, go back and revert back to the WebFOCUS theme. And we can keep that information available that you've adjusted and changed, even if you decide to deactivate or the feature. So the theme can be in effect, the WebFOCUS theme can be in effect, and it's not until you actually publish it is it available to the users to actually see. So it really is very helpful in the perspective of allowing you to adjust your WebFOCUS environment to have a customized look and feel that meets more in line with the way you have your environment for your company themed. And it doesn't really require technical expertise. You'll see the UI is very straightforward. And the advantage is, right, it can build, it helps with adoption, with user adoption, right? Because you're providing that kind of look and feel that's similar, it's familiar user environment look and feel that they're already familiar with the company, whether it's internal users or external customers. So the use of those the adoption of your application that you develop is more likely to take fit. It fits more seamlessly. And I know over past years prior to this feature, if you wanted to do this, you had to customize files. And then if you upgraded, those things could change. So now we provide it as part of the product to make it truly seamless and everything. So hopefully that just gives you an overview. And like I said, the UI really is very intuitive, I believe. And it was really designed to make this as easy as possible to at least allow for the features that we do enable. Now, the very first thing is navigation. So I'm an administrator right now. I'm just going to hover over here in the upper right-hand corner just so that you can see I'm a user. I'm an admin user, and I've logged in. And let me just say, I'm going to position myself on workspaces just for the moment. And then how do I navigate to the white labeling? Well, there's two ways. You can use the main menu from the WebFOCUS Hub. And if you click that and you can select Management Center, that'll bring you to the Management Center. There's a client administration section. There's a server administration section. And normally maybe you might be at the administration console, et cetera, so forth, import external packages. But white labeling is the last one there. And that's how you would get to this section in terms of this feature, right? The other methodology is to navigate is, let's just say I'm in workspaces and I have this navigation area over here, this side navigation area that you can see I'm hovering over, and you can see it's highlighting the different areas. It's the same options you get from the main menu, but this navigation area sidebar, hub sidebar is available, and I could just as easily had selected Management Center. And then depending where I had been, I was in white labeling, so that's the option that was displayed. So now that you know how to navigate, pretty straightforward. And again, you have to be an administrator. So even if you're not an administrator, I think it's useful to be aware that this feature exists. And maybe that's something to be considered for your application, for your WebFOCUS environment. Okay, so what you see here right now is you see a lot grayed out. It's not enabled. There's a checkbox here that says Enable Styling Overrides. And it's unchecked by default, unless you're actually working on customizing the WebFOCUS environment, right? Doing your own branding, your own customized branding. So if it's unchecked, right, it's deactivated and it's the default WebFOCUS theme. But if it is activated, if it's checked, then the user interface is going to be based on that custom styling, assuming that, not only have you saved it, but you've also published it to users and everything. But what's great about this feature is, again, you can preview it, make changes, and you're not impacting all of your users in order to see this. And multiple administrators could be doing their own thing. It's until something's published, it's not seen by the user. So let's just check the box. And now you can see there's areas that are enabled, and you can see the buttons here are enabled as well. If I uncheck it, it actually gives me a message telling me custom styling will be turned off and the WebFOCUS default theme will display. All changes will be saved, meaning any kind of changes I made, that part is saved there in case I want to come back to it at a later point, which is very useful. So I can just say okay, and now you can see it's disabled again. Of course, though, I want to enable it in order to showcase it via this demo. So I'm going to enable it, and then you'll see there's several buttons up here we'll take a look at. Reset to default, meaning to the default of the WebFOCUS theme. You can always go back to that no matter what. You can revert to last published, And that means revert back to the last published page that you actually clicked publish to, but you can't go back multiple iterations. It'll only go back to the last one. And then publish is actually to push it out there, to publish it for all the users of that WebFOCUS environment to be able to see that customized branding color palette changes, right? So there's also 2 tabs here by default. It will bring you to the branding tab, and then there's also a color palette tab. And we'll take a look at both of those. And just getting started, the very first thing here is a favicon. And the favicon, and if you hover over here, that little purple icon, that little purple eye, it gives you some best practices. It lets you know what types of formats are supported. We have ICO, SVG, PNG, JPEG, and GIF are supported. And a favicon is what? A favicon is, if you're not aware of it, it's just a graphical image, right, associated with a particular web page, right, or a website. And it's really displayed as a visual reminder of the identity of that website or that web page. So what we do is here, this is just that little icon is just giving you that kind of information. And a favicon usually, in terms of dimensions, usually want to be by 32 by 32 pixels in terms of size. Here you can see, yes.
So there's a question, does unchecking the box, I'm assuming that's the enable styling override, is it the same as a reset to default?
No, it is going back to what the default is, but for the WebFOCUS theme, but it'll keep whatever options I picked here if I want to come back to it, even though they might not be actually enabled for a user. So as an example here, what I was going to get to, so it leads in right what I wanted to show. Here I have this favicon, right? Here you can see is the default favicon for the WebFOCUS theme, which is up here in the browser tab, that little IBI icon. But I can click this little upload. And let me go to some favicons I have here, and I'll pick red. I like the color red. And this happens to be an ICO. I also have one for a PNG. But I'm going to upload. Now, you see how this is updated here, right? And I haven't actually saved it yet. So it's not going to impact my environment. The moment I click this save on the bottom, and notice if I scroll here, there's additional information, but that save is displayed so that you can't overlook it. If I click save, you'll see the favicon up here in the upper left-hand corner, that browser tab was updated to showcase it. Now, certainly what I could do is if I disable this button right now, it's going to let you know. It actually tells you in the message, custom styling will be turned off. The WebFOCUS theme will display again. So it will be the default WebFOCUS theme. If I click OK, you can see that the favicon changed back to the WebFOCUS theme, and all the other styling would too. It would be the entire WebFOCUS theme would be now back. And again, I've only done this for my session. I haven't even published this yet to users. But you'll notice, even though it's grayed out, you can actually still see that red favicon that I had uploaded is still there. Okay. So hopefully that kind of addresses that question.
Okay, and there's another question. Sure. When you say it updates everything for all users, is there anything that allows for individual users to make updates to their own view rather than apply it to everyone?
Great question. And the answer at this time is no. The theme applies to all users if once published, right? And I didn't even get to this. This is just showcasing what I've done as an administrator, and it impacts only my environment. So I'm not impacting all users by trying to make this customizations, the changes to the theme. But it's a great question, because what if I have maybe separate groups of separate users that I want to see certain styling? So we only have the one theme right now. And you either have the theme that's the WebFOCUS default theme, or the theme that you've actually published to users. It's an all or nothing right now, but certainly there's a feature request enhancement to look into that as a potential feature for the future and everything. So if you have real interest in that, if that's something that's very important to your site that you believe would really enhance your using capabilities of this white labeling feature, I certainly encourage you to reach out to support, open up that case, and reflect that interest. But definitely there is a feature request. But right now it's a one and all kind of theme. You have one theme, and it's either the WebFOCUS default theme, or it's the theme that you've actually customized for your entire user base of WebFOCUS and published so that all users have access to it. So great questions. And you guys paid attention. I love it. Thank you. It's a really good topic. So I'm excited about it. All right. So let me just come back. I'm going to re-enable. And now you can see that I enabled it again. You can see my favicon was updated as well. Right. Now, one thing to note with the upload is it's coming like from my local machine and everything like that. That's pretty easy and straightforward. One thing to be aware of is it doesn't retain the files like that you've uploaded in the past. So whatever you have, obviously, if I wanted to now change this back, or let me say I want to change this, and I'll upload, let's say, the green one. And I haven't saved it, so you're not seeing it there yet, but let me just save it just to save it. And now you can see it updated, the green. Now favicon is there. But let's say now I decided, nope, you know what? I want to go back to the red. There's not like a list box to say, hey, come back. So you really do have to re-upload what the color, whatever it is in terms of assets. But it's pretty straightforward otherwise. It's, like I said, the whole point of this was to make it so that you really didn't have to have a technical knowledge to be able to do this. I mean, it's just you have to have the assets. And you could be working with the branding team for your company to develop these assets so that they can be yet leveraged and utilized. And that becomes even, I think, more apparent with the color palette tab that we'll look at in a little bit. So, okay, that's the favicon. Pretty straightforward. And actually, let me just do a save, right? Because you see it's still showing green. But now I saved it, and now I can see that the red favicon is there. So just to make this, to go a step further, is what if I'm a user, right? And I'm not an admin, and I'm an administrator right now. I want to prove that this is not really impacting my users and everything. So I have another session opened that here I have an incognito window and everything. And this user is called D user. It's a developer and everything. So they have some capabilities and everything. And if I change, and if I were to publish changes for the theme, the user has to refresh their page before they would see that. But you can see right now it's still showing. My image is deliberately a little bit slow. You might have seen it flash the other favicon quick, but that was just because of the image and what I'm showcasing this deliberately for other demos as well. So, but you could see that it hasn't impacted my display. I refreshed the page and it's still showing the original favicon, and I still have the default WebFOCUS theme because this is just a user and this is not, it hasn't been published yet out to the user commit to for that WebFOCUS environment specifically. So now I'm going to come back.
Renee?
Yes, another question.
So I got a lot of questions today.
Wow. Okay.
The default images for favicon logos, etc., can they be downloaded to get a starting sample to give to their local UI teams to do the artwork?
No. The color palette can for the colors, not for these. However, like I said, I did give the dimensions and everything. And what I could do is for Shay, I could give some samples in a zip file of some images and logos that you could kind of take and use that as a sample after this. So I'll make sure it's available to Shay, a simple zip file with some of these images for your reference.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. I love it. Great questions. And it tells me that you're interested in paying attention. So I love it. Thank you. So great. So that's the favicon. What about logos? So there are 4 different areas of WebFOCUS product that we allow you to update both the logo and the browser tab label. And if I scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see the 4 areas. So obviously the favicon is still there, but let's go into the logos area, and you can see the hub here, then the WebFOCUS homepage to the side of it, and then below that, the reporting server, and then designer. So if you hover over the logos information, it tells you, it gives you the formats, and it lets you know that the area, the local area should be 38 pixels high, proportional scale up and down. And we do recommend the transparent background. So we try to give you some best practices and everything for that with that information. And so for the hub, you can actually see here, right, that here is the IBI WebFOCUS Hub logo, and you can see that right up here in the banner. And you can see from the browser tab, you can see the IBI trademark WebFOCUS Hub, and you can see that that's the browser tab label there. So let me just make that change. So I'm actually going to click again. You have the little load icon here, and I'll click that. And let me go to my logos. And I want to pick the hub, and I'm going to pick white because that's representing the text for that. So it just happens to be for my logo and everything. So that's the hub header logo white, and I'm going to open that. And then you can see it updated here in terms of the logo. So it replaced the logo that was there. But notice it hasn't yet changed the banner logo. Why? Because I haven't saved it over here. So I have to actually save it and click save. Same thing with the favicon. So with any of these, until you hit save, it's not going to impact your view as an administrator in working with this feature. So I'm going to save it. And now you can see it instantly updated the logo. Pretty straightforward. The whole point of the interface was to really design to make it as user-friendly as possible. So, okay, what about the browser tab label? Right now it says, the IBI WebFOCUS Hub. You can see it up there in the actual browser. I'm just going to change this, and just to make the simplicity's sake, I'm just going to say WCE, representing World Class Enterprises, Inc., right, for short. And then I'm going to click, and it's there, but until I hit save, so I'm hovering over save, then I'll see it, and you can see it instantaneously updated, right? The hub browser tab. Now, certainly, if I go back here to my D user, again, I know you've seen the flash again. It's because it's a slower machine deliberately, but you can see it did not impact the logo. It did not impact the browser tab text. My favicon is still the default. So as a user of that WebFOCUS environment, they're not seeing the changes yet. And again, because it hasn't been published. Okay, so that's the hub. Okay, what about the WebFOCUS homepage? Now, the WebFOCUS homepage can be, if your environment is leveraging it, it's an older page. There's the legacy homepage, and there's also the WebFOCUS homepage. So if I just showcase that, let me bring that up. You can see it has the favicon was updated, and you can see the IBI Focus logo, and it says the IBI WebFOCUS homepage, and that matches up with what you're seeing here in the white labeling. So I want to change that, and I'm going to make that. And that's obviously if you use it. If you don't utilize it in your environment, then it's not something that you have to change. But let's say I want to use the hub logo white. I just wanted to put something there. So, oops, sorry, picked wrong. I want black. Haha. So you can see how you can make changes, right? And it was a good change. It was a good thing to do, actually. So let me pick the black one because that's the text that I want to see. It's the color. And so you can see now I have that, but I haven't saved it. So if I come over here, right, I still see the IBI WebFOCUS. But if I save it, lo and behold, you see the impact to the logo. And then certainly, again, it's the same thing with the browser tab. So I'm just going to change that to WCE space homepage, and I'll save it. And then you can see also the browser text, right, updated, and my logo changed too. It really is as simple as that. But again, I haven't published it yet, so I'm only impacting and I'm only making changes in my environment for testing purposes, right? Until it's configured to a point where you would want to publish it. Now, the next part, which is probably an important part, depending on your user base and whether they have access, is the reporting server. So right here, you can see I have IBI WebFOCUS reporting server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the administration console, reporting server, server connections, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to bring up the reporting server console here. And you can see the favicon, you can see the browser text label, and you can see the logo that's displayed, which matches when I go back to the white labeling section of the client administration, right? You can see that matches up with this. So I'm going to change this. And let's put the reporting server, let's pick one. I'll pick this one, logo black. And you can see that it has World Class Enterprise Inc. server, and I'll save that. And then if I go to you can see it updated the logo. And the same thing, so you can see it's pretty straightforward, right? I'm not going to steer you wrong on that, right? Try to make it as user-friendly as possible. And here I put WCE reporting server, and then I'll save it. And then you can see it updated. So the logo and my browser text, tab text is updated as well. Now, I do want to bring one point because I do recognize that sometimes, depending on the level of user, you might go directly to the reporting server console. So this is an important aspect to be aware of. So I'm going to copy part of this URL. And then I'm going to change it. So I'm actually accessing the reporting server directly. I had already logged in earlier, so it didn't bring me the login. But you'll notice something right away, right? You see the favicon is still the original theme. The text, the browser tab text is still the original theme, and the logo is still the original theme. And the important thing to be aware of with the white labeling feature, that the reporting server, if you go connect through the reporting server console through the hub, then it respects the white label branding for the reporting server. However, if you go directly in a direct URL, it will keep the default WebFOCUS theme. There is a look to potentially enhance that. That would take some additional work because that's a direct URL call. So we'd have to keep that. But just to be aware of it, I think it's an important aspect because you might think, well, something's not quite working right. No, that's expected behavior because this white labeling theme is as through the WebFOCUS Hub and connecting that way. But if you do a direct URL call to the reporting server, you will always have the default WebFOCUS theme displayed. Okay, the next one is Designer. And I want to showcase and spend a little bit of time on this one just so that you're aware of, because there is a subtlety to it. So what I want to do first is I'm going to go to Workspaces, My Content, and I want to show this. I have this retail revenue sales report, right? And I'm going to just showcase the properties on that, right-click properties, just so that you can see that the name of the file is retail revenue sales report sample, but the title is a little bit different, right? And it's just without the keyword sample that's actually in the focus app, right, for the title. So I'm going to close out the properties, and I'm actually going to open that up in Designer. So I'm going to select Edit. It's a Designer request. And you can see that it has retail revenue sales report, right, as the browser tab text. I'm spending a little time on this because the little subtleties are important with Designer, just so that you understand why there's a certain behavior that exists. Okay, so that's something that I've already had developed in Designer that I'm in the middle of editing that actually has a name and a title associated with it. I've done a save. It exists, right? So now I'm going to come back to the hub, do plus. I'm going to do create visualizations because what I want to do is I want to actually create something brand new, right? I'm not going to go any further than this. You can see what the logo is, and you can see what the browser tab is, right? You can see it says IBI WebFOCUS Designer because it's something new that I haven't saved yet, so it doesn't have a title yet. And then you could see the default logo, which you can see when I come back to the white labeling here and scroll down, you can see that matches that up, right? So now I want to actually change this. I want to actually change and say, okay, I'm going to change that logo to be something other than what you see right now. So I'm going to do my little upload icon. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to select the Designer. Let's see, logo black is on the bottom here. And I'll open that up. So you can see it says World Class Enterprise Inc. and Chart Creator, right? And okay, I'm going to save that. Now, when I do that, you can certainly see, and I'll go through these, right? For the new instance that I already had open, it has the logo. And also for the one that already existed, it has the logo. Okay, updated, pretty straightforward. And definitely if I was a user of this environment, and if I had published it, then that user would also see that as well. So now I want to actually update the browser tab label. And here I'm going to change it to WCE Designer, right? And now I'm going to save it. Now, the browser tab label says WCE Designer. Now, for the existing, remember both of these browser tabs were open when I made this change, and imagine if also I was publishing it, right, to the user, right? What you can see is for an existing Designer request or the existing report that's already open, it's going to keep the title that it has, right? It's the title from the properties that's actually getting displayed in the browser tab. For the one that I had open that was brand new that had yet to be saved, while the logo was updated and any of the color palette theming and all of that, the favicon, that's all enabled and in effect, right? You could see that. But you'll notice that the browser tab still says IBI WebFOCUS Designer. And the reason for this, and that's why I show this as a subtlety, is because this browser tab has been open or is open, and it's for designer, and you haven't saved it yet, we don't want to override that browser tab in that instance. So if it's something that already exists, it's going to have its title anyway, and we're not going to override it anyway. And if it's something new that you happen to have open when that change went into effect, whether it's just me working on it, the theme on my own as an administrator, or whether I published it, if they happen to be and have just opened it, it will have that by default. It's not going to change. However, if I come back and I create a brand visualization now after the fact that I've saved it or have published it, you can see now it does say WCE Designer, right? So just to be aware of it, it's only with designer and the browser tab label. And the reason for that is because of the title that we show, if it does exist. And then if it doesn't exist because you just opened it before that save went into effect or was published, that's why you're not seeing it. But it's a small, very narrow situation that you might encounter. So I just want to mention it for clarity's sake so that you're aware of it. Now, certainly as a user, coming over here to D-user, if I do plus create visualization, what am I going to get? You can see I still have all of the default branding associated with my environment. Now, if I were to come back, right, you can see it's all both for the hub and for the designer and everything. But now if I come back here and I decide, you know, at this point, you know, let me publish, right? So right now I have my favicon, I've done my logos, I've done my browser tab labels for each of them, and I'm going to actually publish it. Now to custom white labeling configuration successfully published, you get that little toaster message icon there letting you know that it's been saved, and now it's been enabled for all users. Now if I come in and I go over here, right, you have to refresh. Remember, the user is already in these pages, so in order to see the changes, they still have to refresh. So now you can see the favicon, you could see the browser tab label for the hub updated, and if I were to just happen to refresh designer, you can see now that also has been updated as well, and you could see the logo is updated. Now, if I come back, and let's just say, just to be clear about publish and the way revert to last publish works. So I published this out now. Now it's out to the WebFOCUS user base, right, for that WebFOCUS environment. Let's say I come back here to designer and I change and I say, let me pick the logo red. Okay. And then let me just, you know, save that. So now when I look, I can see, right, the red logo in my designer ones that I've updated, right, that are browser tabs that I still happen to have open, whether it's brand new or one that exists, you can see it did update, right? Now, certainly though, if I come back here and I refresh, the user is not going to see that, right, because I haven't published it yet. So let's just say that I'm going to come back here, and now as an administrator, you know what, I don't want that change. I want to go back to the last published. I've made some changes. I might have made a few changes, but whatever was my last published version is what it's going to go back to. So if I say revert to last published, it's going to give me a message saying the saved changes are temporary until published. All changes will be lost when reverting back to the last published settings. Do you want to continue? And I say, okay. And now you can tell, it tells you it's been successfully reverted back to the last published state with that little toaster message icon that you've seen in the upper right-hand corner. And you can see, even though that was the only change I made, the designer tab was changed to that. And certainly if I go back to my user and I refresh, you can still see the branding is still in place, right? It's not showing the red because it never did, because I never published it to begin with, but you can see that that's in effect. I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, okay, what else do I want to take a look at this point? Now, what I'd like to do is really, we kind of reviewed what you have control over. One thing I should mention, just to be very clear, is understanding that what you're changing with the theming here impacts the areas I showed you and the color palette as well. I didn't get to the color palette yet, I will, but I wanted you to be aware of the fact that it's not going to update every area of WebFOCUS, right? Because there's still other areas of WebFOCUS that are using an older UI, user interface design. So Info Assist, right? It's not going to impact if you go into Info Assist. It's not going to impact the administration console areas. It's not going to impact like if you're reporting objects or deferred reports, that kind of thing. Or if you go to the legacy homepage, it's not going to impact those. So that's kind of what I wanted to just be aware of. It will impact everything through the hub that's not those older kind of Windows style kind of styling. So, but just to be very clear about what it will impact. And you can see in terms of the logos and the browser tab labels and the favicon, it's kind of obvious. But for particularly going now into the color palette section, I wanted to be very clear about how it really impacts newer UI areas, but some of the older UI areas, as they get updated, then certainly it will impact those as well. And I just wanted to provide that for clarity. Okay. Any questions?
So Renee, there's not really a question. There's a comment about when you're creating these different areas, it'd be nice if there was like a global area where you can, or have a checkbox to say, apply this to all components.
Yeah, I agree. That would be very nice. That would be that would definitely be another enhancement. Definitely like keeping the resources available instead of having to re-upload them and having maybe say, hey, I just want this one image, but for all of those 4 sections, etc. Yeah, I agree. That would be very nice. And that's something definitely to consider. We did it separately because we wanted to give you control of, you might want the branding to be slightly different depending on what area you're in, but it makes a good point. What if I have the same for all 4? Why shouldn't I be able to just do one upload and have it done instead of going into the individual areas? But that's definitely a feature enhancement and something to consider.
So I suggested that they add these suggestions to the evaluations. That way we can forward them on.
Absolutely. And definitely time open up a case as well. I would definitely forward it, but when customers show real interest by opening up a case, that always has the attention of product management. But certainly all the feedback that you provide in the surveys, I certainly do relay back to product management after these sessions. So absolutely positively helpful. And you come up with some great features and things that, you know, have been discussed. So I think that's great. Okay. So that's that part of it. I do want to get to the color palette. It's pretty straightforward. It's not difficult. But what I wanted to showcase here is when you're on the color palette tab, what we did is we provided you with, it's really 20 lines of different areas that you can change. We give you the name, the usage, and we also show you the color swatch color, right? So it's really showing you a preview of the selected color and then a hexadecimal color value in a little text box. So we give you 2 ways to make these kind of changes if you want to. And the idea was supposed to be to make it as user-friendly as possible depending on the situation. So if you already kind of know what your colors are and you just kind of want to make the changes, hexadecimal, you can actually go in here and just change the value. And I could just say that, and you can see it's reflected in the swatch. I haven't saved it yet or anything like that. I certainly could. It's a valid hexadecimal value. I could scroll down and you can see there's different areas, and we try to give you, with the name, we give you the usage of how it gets applied to what area and everything. And if I were, though, however, to make some kind of change that was invalid, so let's say I put a hexadecimal value and I kind of, you know, back fingered it, so to speak, and I put a G, let me put a G there, which is invalid. You can see that as a red icon. You notice the swatch, it's like a little X there because it can't display a color because it's not a legitimate hex. And really, if I wanted to like save this, it would tell me when I click the save button, error, one or more areas have an invalid entry. So it's not really saving it to make the change where I could even do anything with it. It would just have the default to what it is currently prior to save. But certainly then I can come here to the UI, and I certainly could say, let me make it F instead of, I think it having been a B. And then I certainly could save that. And it took it in, it was accepted and everything. And so from a UI perspective, the user can just manually make these changes right here in the UI. Pretty straightforward. We also give you the option to make this a little bit easier and maybe take what the color palette's available and download it to a file, a text file that could then be changed and manipulated, maybe sent to your branding team for your company, where they can make adjustments and then come back and then you can upload it. So that's what these download and upload options are. So certainly if I download, what you'll see is I click it and it'll be a color palette.txt. I had deleted the other one from a few hours ago just in testing. And certainly if I were to go to my downloads, right, you see it here. And I actually already have a version open, so I'm going to go to that one just to see, so you can see what's there. And you can see there's 21 lines. There's really 20 in the tool, but that last one has 2 hexadecimal values because it's establishing a gradient. And so that's why you see 21 lines. And so there's the name equal and then the hexadecimal value. So you just make changes to the hexadecimal values and then you can upload it accordingly. So just to show you kind of the impact here. So here, if I wanted to, so I downloaded that file, you can send it, make changes, and then come back and then you can upload it. So let me just, I should have changed, I can actually showcase it. If I go to upload, and let me go to color palettes, and I have like a green and gray one. So it has hexadecimal values, but you can see it's called color palette.txt. We say that the name shouldn't change. I've seen it work without it, but you know, that could be tightened up and changed at a later point. So I kept the name the same. I'm going to open it. And you see how it read it. It tells you success, file successfully uploaded. Just to be clear, we're not uploading that file and saving that file somewhere. We just read and parse that file and then update the UI accordingly. So now if I wanted to, I could save this. And you could see it impacted my display here. Of course, though, in terms of, remember, I only saved, I haven't published. So for the user, that I come back over to, you can see it didn't have an impact for that user. So just to showcase, again, what's ever published is published, but I'm impacting my own, and it was environment right now. And certainly, if I wanted to, once you do this, once you do the upload, if you hit save, it's going to take those values, assuming that they're all accurate and there's no technical or syntax issue with it. You know, you can save it without a problem. But I could also, if I wanted to, make some changes here. I could say, you know, here for the header, EEAABB or something like that, and make it pink, and then I could save that. And you could see the impact to the hub header right here by changing that primary color header, right? So I can upload a file, and then I can still make changes if I wanted to, and then save it accordingly, because the file is just parsing those hexadecimal values for each of those named colors, branding colors for the WebFOCUS theme. But then I can change it and save it as well. So also I could maybe upload, just to showcase a different one. Let me come to burgundy and black and open that one. And now you can see that said file successfully uploaded as well. And then I could save that, and you can see the impact to that theme, right? So let me just, for clarity's sake, I'm going to upload the original theme. And again, this is only impacting me when I save it, right? Not to, it's not published at this point. I'm going to come back and I'm going to go to the original, and I'm going to upload the original color palette, right? That's the original one coming in the default WebFOCUS default theme color palette. And I'm going to upload that. And oops, hit upload, sorry. And I wanted to say save. Okay, now you can see it changed my current theme back to what I had originally. Again, my branding, right, is still in effect. I haven't changed it. I haven't reset to default to say go back to everything being the WebFOCUS default theme styling. And here I just wanted to showcase just a few things. So I have TextPad open, right? And you saw that that was the default. If you download the default WebFOCUS theme, this is what you would see for the names and the colors. But what if I just by accident, right, had a color palette where the hexadecimal value was invalid? So I kind of wanted to showcase that. So that's in the color palette _ bad hex. So if I come here and I want to upload that bad hex text file, you can see it says it successfully uploaded the file, but it also let you know that, hey, there was an error there. And notice it highlighted because the hexadecimal value was invalid. It highlighted that. Now, certainly I could try to save it, but if I try to save it with that hexadecimal value being invalid, it's going to let you know one or more of those entries is invalid. It's not letting me save that. Now, certainly I could fix it like I showcased earlier and save it, and that absolutely works. Okay. So what if I had a different situation? And I know these are unlikely, but I kind of, again, wanted to just kind of cover the bases and show what was available. And just need like another few minutes just to showcase this. So what if I had, let's say, a syntax issue where here for the primary color active, notice instead of an equal sign, it's a dash there. So if I were to bring up that, now what I want to do first, just to showcase something different there for the active one, let me just put something else here for the moment. So it's different, right? And I'm going to say, I'm not even going to save that, but just to show that that's there. And then I'm going to do the upload of the syntax issue, right? That's the one I wanted. You notice it said it successfully uploaded the file, but it says one of the more invalid had an invalid entry. Now, it wasn't a hexadecimal value that was incorrect, so you don't see anything red bordered highlight to say that was wrong. But you notice that it didn't update that swatch area for active, right? Because it didn't replace it because there was a syntax issue when it was parsing that one for the file. Now, I'm also going to do change this one to EABB as well, just so that you can see that. And here, I'm going to do another one where it's an incorrect name for light, right? So I did COLAR. So I made a typo. Maybe I was in there and just how it just happened to make a little typo there. And now I'm going to upload that incorrect name one, right? So if I pick that, I get the message it uploaded. It said one of the more areas were invalid, but notice it updated the primary color active because this time there wasn't a syntax issue there, but here it didn't update the primary color light because there was a syntax issue in terms of the name and everything like that. Now, I could do a combo if I wanted to. Let me just make this back to EABB, something there. And I could do an upload where I have a combo file where it has all of the issues. So I have the invalid hex, I have also the incorrect name, attribute name, and then also the syntax issue, right, in the file. And then if I do that and I upload it, oops, sorry. Yeah, upload, and let me say combo issues. Tells me the same messaging and everything, but you can see it didn't update those two areas. And of course, also, you can see the hexadecimal. And if I try to save it, it's still not going to let me do that because the hexadecimal value for one of these is incorrect. But again, we come back here, change it, save it, and now you'll see that impact as well. So I know there was a lot of information that I relayed. Hopefully, you got a great understanding of, and again, what I published, right? I published this and it's out there, but I haven't published the changes here. So the user are still seeing what I had published last. Now, if I wanted to, just as a last thing, I could just say, hey, you know what? Everything, I want to reset it to the default. If I reset it to the default, it means it can't be undone, right? If I say, okay, everything has gone back to the default, including everything with my branding and everything like that. So now when I come over here, you can see all the branding, right, for the user. It goes back to what it was as the default WebFOCUS theme branding. So I just wanted to do that last piece. And again, if I had made changes and I want to save it, but then I want to just have the full theme, I can uncheck this as well, but I can still make changes. And I didn't have to do what I did. I just wanted to showcase that I could reset back to default at any point if I wanted to just bring everything back to the WebFOCUS default theme before I made changes. So again, I hope today's session was really useful and they got a great understanding of the feature and the capabilities. And yes, definitely things that we could definitely enhance to make it even more applicable and user-friendly, or an attribute to what you would need in terms of your company's requirements. So thank you everyone for your attention, and let me open it up. Walter, are there any other questions available posted?
No other questions so far.
Okay. But definitely, please, the surveys, fill them out and let us know what you would like to see in terms of features and enhancements to this capability. I will definitely bring it back to product management. And I will make sure I give those sample logo and favicon images for Shay to make available when she sends the email out once the recording is available. So I want to thank everyone for their time, and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to hand it back off to Walter in 1 second.
Thanks, Renee.
You're welcome. Just give me a second. Okay.
So from here on, we're going to start talking about mainframe specific topics. I will be talking a little bit about DBA. So if you're interested in that, that is not mainframe specific. So if you just want to see what DBA can do for you, feel free to stick around. But then at the end, I will be speaking specifically about functionality that's only available on the mainframe in regards to DBA. If you do drop, please remember to fill out your evaluation. We look at them every time we do a session, and we value your feedback. And if you are dropping, we'll see you next time, hopefully. Okay, so I should be sharing.
You are.
All right, so the main thing I'm going to talk about today is a procedure or a hook that we have in the Focus product called Focus ID. And Focus ID allows you to use your external security, whether it be ACF2, RACF, top secret, and use that in order to set the user or the password in order to invoke the DBA, the database access components within your synonym or master file. So I'm gonna quickly go over DBA. I'm not gonna go over anything in specifics, just to go over each slide, show you what's available. And I wanted to do this so that we can provide you with the presentation, so that way you have a reference when you go back to see what DBA can do, and maybe it's something that you want to, if you're not using it, start using. All right. So DBA allows you to further restrict access to the file, and it's only done within the Focus product. So it's outside of any top-level security mechanisms that you have. It's implemented with a DBA attribute in the master, and the set pass equals password. It can also be set user equals password. It's synonymous, the set pass and the set user. If you look at a synonym or master and you see at the bottom DBA an end, and then DBA equals the DBA value, and then the user, then you know that this particular master synonym is using DBA. The DBA value gives unrestricted access to the file, and then the user would have to then be included if they don't have a DBA value. No, so the user says equals user, but technically it's user equals the password. So again, they're synonymous. And then you have your access and your access rights. So let's see what we got. When you use DBA, the recommendation is that you probably want to encrypt your master, because you don't want people just to be able to go in and look and see what they need to set their user to in order to access the data that they were not given access to. So that's something to keep in mind. Here's some example of what the DBA section might look like. We have user equals super, has read-write access to everything because there's no additional components. DBA equals Jones ABC. So if somebody sets the user to that or the password to that, they will have access to everything. User equals blank says if they don't come in as a particular user, then they're going to use the user blank. So that would be like a default for everyone else. And that's usually if you don't set the user value. So if you don't set it, the value will default to blank, and then you're going to set like a default access. So this basically goes over all that. Again, the intention isn't to go over these in detail, but just to show you what's available. You can do read access, write access, read write access, and update. You can limit it to field level, the segment level, a program. And this one, no print, will allow you to access a field in your report, but if you have the no print set on it, the value will be defaulted as a blank or 0, depending on if it's alphanumeric. You can restrict based on a value, or you can restrict based on a value where condition. So you can create an expression that says what has to be true in order for the person to be able to see this value. We got rates. So each individual file can have its own DBA inside of it, or you can store all of your DBA information for all of the files in your application in one DBA file. And that kind of centralizes everything into one place and makes it easier to maintain. Okay, and this is the entries of a DBA file. So here I have employee, job file, and eject file. The end of each of them is pointing to the DBA file, DBA F4. And DBA F4 has the entries for file employee, file job file, and file eject file. Some limitations. So since we're not going into the detail, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Okay, so that was quickly a quick overview of what DBA can do. And the next part now is specifically on the mainframe, we give you an exit that you can call Focus ID. Now, this is something that technically you need to provide. It's not something that we offer, although we do have some sample code that you can use. And so I'm going to show you the sample code that I'm using and how it works. All right, so the user exit Focus ID enables an external security system, your RACF, your ACF2, your top secret, to set the password for you automatically so that when a person goes into Focus, they're unaware even that they have a username or a password that they're setting. So if you're currently using Focus ID in an older version, older being before 7.7 or 7703, you can use the same Focus ID module that you're using in the older version and just copy it into your foclive.load or your f.home.load library in the new version. And it will still work. Nothing else needs to be done. Just copy it over. You're good to go. If you don't have previously used Focus ID or have a Focus ID module, you need to contact support. And if you want to get our basic assembler code, inside of f.home.data is a member called Focus ID J, which is J for JCL, which will assemble and link the code that you're going to use, and it does an assembly code compilation. And then you just need to add your RACF ATF entries to add installation data for your Focus ID value. And then you'll see that it looks like installation ID equals Focus ID, and then the value that you're going to return. All right, so that's basically how Focus ID, that's what it does. So now let's jump over to my mainframe, because you can't talk about mainframe without showing a green screen. So here is Focus ID code for RACF, which I'm not going through the code because I don't speak assembly that well. I just want to point out here that this ID string is this is using FOCUS open paren focus. This is the eye catcher of what we're going to look for in the installation string. So in this case, we're using focus open paren. Some versions we have, this is Focus ID. So the one I'm going to show, I'm actually using the one that says Focus ID, I think. To see that installation data that I was talking about, there's an LU command, which is list user. And if you notice here, my installation data says Focus. So using the assembly code that I just showed you, if I was using that, then this ID would have access by setting the user automatically to Walter when I get into Focus. Okay. I'm going to look at the JCL, which is the Focus ID J. So it has assembly code, it has the linkage, and then it creates a new Focus ID module. I say new because there isn't one already to start with. Okay, so we looked and we saw on my RACF definition, I have Focus and then open paren Walter. So I'm going to go in now and start a C list to start Focus using a load library that I already installed the Focus ID in. So I'm using my APF authorized library, and I'm doing this for 9.3, I think it's 9.303, might be 9.304. So if I execute 9.304, if I look at the master, I took the car file and I added DBA to the end of it. And I added DBA Walter. And you saw in my installation data that I had it set to Walter. So if I do table file car DBA, it says I don't have sufficient rights to access the file. And that's because in this ID, I have it established as Focus open paren Walter, but when I installed and compiled the code, I used the one using the Focus ID. So let's come over to my other ID. Which does have Focus ID with my name. And I'm going to run the same C list. Okay, I ran the non-authorized version of Focus, but it doesn't really matter. So now I have access to the data because in the background, the focus ID returned the value Walter, which is what the set user was set to. So it's a way to use it without having to make sure that your users have to set the users themselves or set their individual passwords. It can be established when their user ID is set up for TSO in the security configuration, and then be read using Focus ID and set for them automatically. So are there any questions on that? I hear crickets. All right, so let me stop sharing. All right, so if there's no questions, I want to thank everyone for coming. And again, please remember to fill out your evaluations. Any comments that you want to see in future sessions, as Renee mentioned, please put them on the evaluations also. And hopefully we'll see you next week. And we appreciate everybody for coming, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Happy Friday.